The stranger in the snow. The wind howled like a pack of wolves through the trees, shaking the timbers of Eliza Mayfield's cabin as snow drifted against the windows. It had been days since she'd seen another soul. Just her chickens, and a fading fire trying to keep the chill at bay. Winter on the frontier was a cruel master, but she had faced worse. She had buried a husband, fought off hunger, and learned how to shoot straighter than most men. Life demanded it. She was splitting firewood near the barn when she noticed it, a streak of red across the white snow, fresh and out of place. Her heart jumped. She followed it, slow and cautious, gripping her axe tight. Just past the edge of the barn, where the woodpile cast deep shadows, something stirred. A groan low, pained. Eliza raised the axe over her head. Lying half-buried in snow, slumped against the side of the barn, was a man. His dark braided hair, tattered buckskin, and beaded armband left no doubt Comanche. Blood soaked his side, and his breath came in ragged gasps. His eyes fluttered open, dark and wary. She could run. She could scream. She could bury the axe in his chest, and no one would question it. But something held her back. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't move at all, except to whisper, "Help, please." Eliza lowered the axe. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the desperation in his eyes. Maybe it was the voice of her late husband whispering from memory. "Don't let the world harden your soul, Eliza." Whatever the reason, she bent down and slid her arms under his. He was heavy with dead weight and pain. Every few steps, he groaned, but she gritted her teeth and dragged him to the cabin. Inside, the fire flickered low. She laid him on a bearskin rug and tore off his coat. The wound in his side was deep. Knife or bullet, she couldn't tell. She boiled water, crushed herbs, and stitched him while he slipped in and out of consciousness. It was the middle of the night before the bleeding slowed and his fever started to break. For 3 days, he hovered between life and death. She brought him broth when he could swallow. He barely spoke, except for a few broken English words. His name was Tahu. He said little else, only that he had been ambushed by scouts and left to die. His eyes held stories, grief, pain, rage, but he said nothing more. Eliza didn't ask. She didn't want to know if he had killed anyone. She just kept tending to him. The third morning, she found him standing, swaying weakly by the window, looking out at the snow. He flinched when she stepped in, but didn't run. His voice was hoarse. "You not kill me." "Why?" She hesitated. "Because you were dying, and I ain't a killer." He looked at her for a long time, then nodded slowly. "I." They lived in silence after that, coexisting. He mended her tools. He fixed a broken leg on the chicken coop. He never touched a weapon. At night, he sat by the fire and carved strange shapes into its scraps. She caught herself watching him, and once, when she handed him a cup of tea, their fingers brushed and lingered. Something in her chest fluttered. She hadn't felt that in years. But trouble was coming. One morning, Eliza rode into town for supplies. The general store was buzzing with whispers. A posse had found signs of a Comanche warrior on the ridge, wounded and traveling alone. "We'll catch him soon," one man sneered. "String him up like the last one." Eliza said nothing, her face calm, but her hands trembled as she packed her flour and beans. She rode home fast, heart pounding. That night, she sat across from Tahu near the fire. "They're hunting you," she said quietly. "I go," he answered. "You won't make it. Not in this snow. And I won't let them find you." Tahu looked into her eyes. "You risk your life. For me." Eliza didn't answer. She just stared into the fire. The next day, she found footprints in the snow near the edge of the forest. They weren't hers. Someone had been watching the cabin. She didn't sleep that night. Neither did Tahu. The cabin felt too small. The wind outside screamed like the end of the world. As the sun rose behind a thick curtain of clouds, Eliza knew the storm wasn't just in the sky. It was coming for them both, fire and judgment. The morning sky hung low and gray, thick with the promise of snow. Eliza stood at her window, staring out at the forest's edge where the pines stood dark and silent. Her breath fogged the glass. Behind her, Tahu moved quietly, packing what little food he could into a sack. Neither of them spoke. They both knew what today meant. Then came the sound, hoofbeats, distant but steady. Eliza grabbed her rifle from the mantel, loading it with calm, practiced hands. Tahoe didn't flinch, but his eyes were sharp. He picked up the hunting knife she had let him keep and slid it under his belt. "Go to the cellar," she said softly. Tahoe nodded and slipped through the trapdoor in the floor, vanishing into the shadows. Moments later, the riders arrived. 4 men. The sheriff, Tobias Reed, led them. He was a stern, leather-skinned man with a long gray coat and a voice that didn't rise unless it needed to. Behind him were Ezekiel Harper, Luke Dalton, and Jed Clay, settlers with quick tempers and quicker rifles. Eliza, the sheriff greeted, tipping his hat. "Sorry for the early visit." She stepped outside, boots crunching in the snow. "What's this about?" "Just checking in. Word is the Comanche raiders been spotted near here. You seen anything unusual?" Eliza kept her face still. Just snow and silence. The sheriff looked past her shoulder at the cabin. "Mind if we look around?" She hesitated. "You got a warrant?" "Don't need one for friendly chat," Jed said, already moving toward the barn. The sheriff gave her a long look, then motioned to the others. They spread out, one to the barn, one to the woodshed, and the third pacing near the cabin's back door. The sheriff stepped inside without asking. Eliza followed him. Her heart pounded as his boots echoed on the wooden floor. He walked past the stove, the chairs, the fireplace. His eyes lingered on the trapdoor in the corner. "Just for a second. Been alone long?" he asked. "Since my husband passed," she answered. "You're brave, live out here. Brave or foolish? Maybe both." He walked to the door and paused. "We'll be back tonight, just to make sure. Be safe, Eliza." The men mounted up and rode off, snow swirling in their wake. As soon as they vanished into the woods, she opened the trapdoor. Tahoe emerged, his face grim. "They'll come back," he said. "I know. We must leave." She nodded, biting her lip. "There's a trader 3 miles south. Frenchman. Doesn't ask questions. If we make it there, he might help." Tahoe looked at her. "You come." Eliza hesitated. "I have nothing left here." They packed quickly. Food, blankets, a spare rifle. As the light faded, they slipped into the trees behind the cabin, using the snowfall to cover their tracks. But they hadn't gone far before a shout shattered the silence. "There!" In the trees. Gunshots cracked through the night. Eliza ducked as bark splintered off a tree beside her. Tahoe pulled her behind a fallen log. The posse had returned, and they weren't interested in talking. "They saw us," Eliza whispered. Tahoe looked at her. "Go." "I stay." "Not a chance," she snapped. "We end this together." The settlers fanned out through the trees, torches in hand. Eliza and Tahoe circled back, using the terrain to their advantage. But as they neared the cabin again, the smell of smoke filled the air. They had set the cabin on fire. Eliza froze. Her home, everything she'd built, burning to the ground. The flames roared like a beast, devouring her past. And standing around it were the settlers, rifles ready, eyes cold. "There she is," Jed shouted. "And the savage, too." They raised their weapons. Eliza fired first. One shot. Jed collapsed, clutching his leg. The others opened fire. Tahoe tackled her behind a snowdrift. They were outnumbered and exposed. Then came a roar. Tahoe charged from cover, slashing with his knife, a blur of fury and pain. Ezekiel went down, screaming. Luke turned to fire, but Eliza dropped him with a shot to the shoulder. The sheriff yelled for order. "Stop! Enough!" But the damage was done. Breathing hard, Eliza stood beside Tahoe in the snow, smoke curling into the sky behind them. Jed moaned on the ground. Ezekiel didn't move. Luke whimpered in the distance. The sheriff looked at the two of them, his face tight with disbelief and anger. "You just made enemies of the whole town," he said. "Then I reckon we'll keep moving," Eliza replied. Tahoe stood straight, blood on his hands but eyes steady. "We no start war, but we not die here." Sheriff Reed nodded slowly. "Get out. If you ever show your faces near town again, I won't stop them." They didn't wait. They turned and vanished into the trees as the flames consumed the last of Eliza's cabin. Weeks later, they walked for days, through snow and hills, through silence and cold. At last, they found the French trader. He gave them food, shelter, and no questions. They stayed a while, long enough for Tahu's wounds to heal, long enough for Eliza to rest. And when spring came, they traveled on. A Comanche warrior and a settler widow, two souls who defied hate, bound by a single act of mercy that changed them both. Where they went, no one knew, but the legend lingered. A woman who saved a man the world told her to hate, a man who risked death to defend her, and a fire that didn't burn them, but set them free.